Hello and welcome to my YouTube. This YouTube is remembering the year 1950. I was 6 years old in 1950, and this is my first grade class. This is me over here on the left with the big ears sticking out. Harry Truman was the president in 1950. Now here's a little quiz. Who is this man? If you know the answer, you're really old and you're well informed. The answer is, that is Alvin W. Barkley, the Vice President of the United States in 1950. Had to look that up because I certainly wouldn't have known him. On January 17th, 11 men steal more than $2.7 million. In today's dollars, that would be $35 million. From the Brinks Armored Car Depot in Boston. This robbery went unresolved for 6 years, and finally one of the guys tried to kill the other one, and so the one that was wounded confessed in his hospital, and they caught all 11 of the guys. The headline says 1.5 million. Well, that was just the cash. There were checks and bonds and other things. And they left behind $1 million because they didn't know how much was in there and they weren't prepared to haul it all out. On January 31st, President Truman orders the development of the hydrogen bomb. The summer before, the Russians exploded the atomic bomb for the first time. So we decided we needed to stay ahead of the Russians, hence the development of the hydrogen bomb, which was even more powerful. The Korean War begins on June 25th. Tens of thousands of North Korean soldiers invade into South Korea, and that triggered the Korean War. 3 days later, on June 27th, President Truman orders the United States military to defend South Korea. That was on the 27th. 4 days later, on July 1st, American troops entered into Korea to begin fighting. On August 25th, President Truman nationalizes the American railroads to prevent a strike. I mean, the war had just started a month before, and he couldn't afford to have the nation crippled and paralyzed by a rail strike. So he had the government take over the railroads to stop the strike. That year, the FBI announced the first of the 10 most wanted list. First time they'd ever done this. This is the front page of the Washington newspaper. On September 15th, about a month and a half after the war started, 75,000 Allied troops under the command of General Douglas MacArthur land in Incheon, South Korea. Incheon was a port city just to the west of the capital, Seoul. The North Koreans had captured Seoul, so this was a surprise attack to try to recapture Seoul, which they did. However, on October 19th, the People's Republic of China enters the Korean conflict by sending 260,000 soldiers across the Yalu River in North Vietnam or North Korea. And that changed everything. I mean, the Allies were winning until the Chinese came in. Back home on November 1st, 2 Puerto Ricans attempted to assassinate President Harry Truman at the Blair House in Washington. Now, the White House was under renovation, so the president had moved to Blair House. And these 2 Puerto Ricans were part of the Puerto Rican independence movement. And it took them several months to plan out this attack. One of them was shot dead on the spot. That's the one you see here. And the other one was injured. Unfortunately, one of the guards was also killed. It's considered probably the biggest shootout that the Secret Service has ever had, because this gun battle went back and forth for several minutes. The comic strip Peanuts is first published on October 2nd. Well, here comes old Charlie Brown. Good old Charlie Brown. Yes, sir. Good old Charlie Brown. How I hate him. And that's how it began. No Peanuts then. Or I should say no Snoopy. The FCC issues the very first license to broadcast television in color in 1950, and it went to CBS. Fisher-Price introduces Little People, and they were the most popular toy of 1950. My daughter had some of these when she was little. On November 10th, a United States Air Force B-50 Superfortress bomber in an emergency jettisoned and detonated a Mark IV nuclear bomb over Quebec, Canada. Fortunately, the device lacked its plutonium core, which would have made it go off as a nuclear explosion. But the bomb did explode. That's the bad news. Now, here's the good news. This is where the bomb landed, about 40 to 50 miles from Quebec City. And the good news is it landed in the middle of the St. Lawrence River. And the St. Lawrence River was 12 miles wide. So the bomb fell into this river and it went off, and it didn't hurt anybody. It didn't do any damage. It just rattled a bunch of windows. On November 24th, a huge winter storm ravages the northeastern United States, bringing up to 50 inches of snow in some places, temperatures dropping to 23 degrees below zero, and in New York City, the winds hit 90 miles an hour, and 323 people were killed in this storm. The famous Alger Hiss espionage trial took place that year, and some of the documents were hidden on film inside a pumpkin, and so this phrase, the pumpkin papers, came into vogue, and this was how the press liked to talk about all of the documents. Very famous trial, well publicized. The Boston Celtics make Chuck Cooper the very first African-American picked in an NBA draft. Up until that time, there were no blacks whatsoever in the NBA. Today, 80% of the NBA players are African Americans. Volkswagen introduced the Volkswagen Type 2 microbus in 1950. Clearasil is introduced, thanks. And I certainly use some of this, and I don't know any teenagers that weren't very, very aware of and users of Clearasil for pimples. Geritol was introduced. Feeling run down because of tired blood? It did have a lot of iron in it, but what it also had was 12% alcohol. So a shot of Geritol had twice as much alcohol as a beer, and almost as much alcohol as a glass of wine. Yeah, no wonder it was good for pepping you up. Kraft singles were introduced way back in 1950, the first time. Up until then, you had to slice the cheese yourself. Now, when I was in college, after I got back from the service, went back to college on the GI Bill, I worked on weekends at the Kraft Food Plant in Champaign, Illinois. This was, it claimed to be the largest food plant in the world under one roof. And we made Kraft singles in that plant. This is the way the cheese shipped into the plant in 4,000-pound chunks. Notice the banana up here that was put in the picture just to show you the scale. These are step ladders, 3-step step ladders. So how many singles could we make out of 4,000 pounds? 128,000 single slices could be made. So they started with this and it came in on box cars and we ended up with single slices. Kellogg's Corn Pops were introduced in 1950. In 1950, only 9% of American homes had a television set. I know my family certainly didn't. We couldn't have afforded one. So, for those few that had them, what were the top TV shows of 1950 in rank order? Number 1, Texaco Star Theater, and the host was Milton Berle. This was a comedy variety show. Second, Fireside Theater. These were dramas. And they started off, they were live. They were before a live audience and nothing was taped. It was all live theater. Number 3, the Philco Television Playhouse. Once again, they started out live and then eventually they went to tape. Number 4, Your Show of Shows, starring Imogene Coca and Sid Caesar. Number 5, the Colgate Comedy Hour. And these were hosted by Lewis and Martin and also Abbott and Costello. A comedy variety show. The popular television show What's My Line debuted in 1950, and the host was John Charles Daly, and the panel was Dorothy Kilgallen, Bennett Cerf, Arlene Francis, and Hal Block. For you oldsters, those names will ring familiar. Your Hit Parade debuted. I love this show. And they started, I think it was like the 7 top songs of the week. And every week it changed. So we always tuned in to see what's going to be number 1. What's the number 1 song? These are 3 of the originals: Eileen Wilson, Snooky Larson, and Dorothy Collins. So they all sang these songs. The George Burns and Gracie Allen Show debuted in 1950. The Jack Benny Show debuted in 1950. And here he is with his sidekick, Rochester. The Cisco Kid debuted in 1950. And an actor by the name of Duncan Rinaldo played the Cisco Kid. He had an interesting life. He was born in Romania, and he came to the United States working as a seaman on a ship, and he jumped ship and worked his way around the United States doing various jobs. He was finally arrested and fined $2,000 and sentenced to 2 years in prison because he faked his passport. So he was an illegal alien trying to pass as an American citizen. Fortunately for him, President Roosevelt pardoned him. Cisco Kid. And his sidekick was Pancho. And they would always tell jokes. Hey, Pancho, see Cisco. You know, my sister is very ugly. Really? How ugly is she? We have to put a sack on her at night so that sleep can sneak up on her. Jokes like that. Truth or Consequences debuted that year. And what they would do is they would ask you a question, the contestants, and if they didn't answer it correctly, then they had to do some silly stunt. And of course, the only reason you tuned in was to watch people do these silly stunts. And they actually said most contestants purposely missed the question on purpose because they wanted to do the stunts. Ralph Edwards was the original host. Beat the Clock debuted that year too, but Bud Collyer. And once again, the contestants were asked to do silly, funny stunts of one kind or another. Here they had to wrap the father up and then unwrap him. I have no idea what they're doing here. The most popular singers of 1950 were, in rank order, number 1, Bing Crosby. Number 2, the Ames Brothers. Number 3, Sammy Kaye and his orchestra. Number 4, Patti Page. And one of my favorites, number 5, Teresa Brewer. In 1950, Teresa was 19 years old. And I'll be singing one of her songs at the end of this video. What were the top grossing movies of 1950? Which ones made the most money? And here they are, starting at number 1. Number 1, Samson and Delilah, starring Victor Mature and Hedy Lamarr. You can't get more handsome and more beautiful than that. Number 2, King Solomon's Mine, starring Stuart Granger and Deborah Carr. Number 3, Annie Get Your Gun, starring 20-year-old Judy Garland. Nope, wait. When they started filming, Judy Garland had the lead. But 1 month into filming, she had so many fights with the director that they fired her, and they hired Betty Hutton in her place. Betty Hutton was a well-known actress, comedian, singer. Cheaper by the Dozen. Don't remember this one. The only name I recognized was Myrna Loy. This one I knew well. Cinderella, the amazing Walt Disney animated. Still love this today. And my daughter grew up loving Cinderella. So what were the top songs in 1950? Starting with number 1, Goodnight Irene, by a little-known group called The Weavers. And I'll be singing this shortly. Number 2, Nat King Cole's Mona Lisa, Mona Lisa, da-da-da-da. No one has a voice like him. Number 3, the theme from The Third Man. Number 4, Sam's Song, starring Gary Crosby and friend. Look at this. Who's the friend? Well, it was Gary Crosby's father, a guy called Bing Crosby. So Bing Crosby is on this record, but his name never appears. He's just called the friend. Go figure. Number 5, same two guys, Gary Crosby and friend, Play a Simple Melody. Play a simple da-da-da-da-da. So, Bing Crosby sang with his son, and his name wasn't even on the record. But he had plenty of other records. So now I'd like to sing 3 of my favorite songs from 1950.
Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Last Saturday night I got married. Me and my love settled down. Now me and my love are parted. I'm gonna take another stroll downtown. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in the town. Sometimes I have a great notion to jump in the river and drown. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Stop rambling, stop your gambling, stop staying out late at night. Go home to your wife and your family. Sit down by the fireside bright. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams. to. All I want is kissing you and music, music, music. Closer, my dear, come closer. The nicest part of any melody is when you're dancing close to me. Put another nickel in the Nickelodeon. All I want is loving you and music, music, music. Another nickel in the Nickelodeon. All I want is having you and music, music, music. I'd do anything for you, anything you want me to. All I want is kissing you and music, music, music. Closer, my dear, come closer. The nicest part of any melody is when you're dancing close to me. So put another nickel in the Nickelodeon. All I want is loving you and music, music, music. All I want is loving you and music, music, music. Was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee Waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced him to my loved one, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. I remember the night and the Tennessee Waltz. Now I know just how much I have lost. Yes, I lost my little darling the night they were playing the beautiful Tennessee Waltz. I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee Waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced him to my loved one, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. I remember the night and the Tennessee Waltz. Now I know just how much I have lost. Yes, I lost my little darling the night they were playing the beautiful